Welcome back to another episode of the Trenchless Table, where this season we are diving into the trades and what it means to be that next generation leader. We have a special guest, Cory Richmond. This family-owned business, Richmond Machine Company, started back in the early 1950s, founded by Claire Richmond, and has grown across 4 generations. Now, you might not think that's interesting or exciting, but I just found out that only 3% of family businesses survive 4 generations. So congratulations on that. So
Thank you.
yeah,
I'm sure there's a reason for that.
that's a great accomplishment, no matter what.
A lot of pressure.
So this company got started in making buggy wheels, is my understanding, and now has a 60,000 square foot facility. And so great growth, great accomplishment. Looking forward to this conversation. But thank you for sitting down at the table with us and looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me, Dustin.
Yeah, so
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
if you want to kind of jump in and just tell us, like, 30,000 foot, how did you get high school to where you're at today in your position you're at now? So cliff notes, but kind of dig into your path.
Yeah, well, starting out, I was blessed enough, I guess, that the business was there. My dad and his 2 brothers and their dad were in the business as I grew up. And so I may not have been an angel as a child. I know that's hard to believe. So I was put to work pretty early. And so with a family business, you're allowed to do that. Where many businesses, you're not, you have to be 18 or whatever it is. Well, not so much in a family business. So very young, got put to work and learned that, this is part of that topic on today's environment and people and kids and working. And I didn't have the luxury somehow of sleeping in. So I got put to work early. That's kind of how that happened. And then through that, I worked relentlessly, really in summers, through high school, through college, went to Hillsdale College, and came back on really any break that I had. Again, I was lucky enough they would allow me to work through Christmas breaks and summers. So that's kind of where I got educated quickly in that business. So from college, went on to really corporate America for about 10 years until we moved home, and my wife was an eye doctor and found a practice to buy into. So that's how we landed back home. The business itself started out doing buggy wheels. As I said, we actually did buggy wheels and fire engines, Reese hitches, those types of things. You may have seen probably at the football field in Montpelier now there is a working locomotive.
Mm-hmm.
Those were all built by us back in the day, many years ago. Some other local companies have helped revive them, so that's kind of cool to see. Those have been there, yeah. So yeah, we've grown. At one point, the company had engineering staff. We did design and build equipment, just a variety of machines for anyone and anything. And then as the company grew slightly through that facet, we really came to focus on just parts. So really any parts. We had a giant box that you guys actually coded for us.
Yeah, I think it up in
Drummond Island.
Drummond Island.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was out on the island. Yeah.
And it was, basically a 13-foot square box, 13 feet tall, that got a liner that needed to have a certain diameter so it wouldn't leak. And we brought it over here. These guys sprayed it. So that's kind of where I got introduced to this company. So we build predominantly large and small fabricated weldments of any kind. We do steel, aluminum, stainless steel. And then we also machine parts too, and it can be small, it can be parts the size of this room. So the challenge with that, of course, is we never really see anything twice. We don't do production. I don't know why. Sometimes I think it would be easier, but we have always played in that world of custom. We call custom, and it means, Cole, you send me 15 drawings, 15 parts, and we quote them. And every day we quote parts. So the challenge with that is if I sat you in there today and said, quote these parts, you just would have no idea. And there just aren't, there's not a lot of us to go around. You'd think that would narrow the competition, but it doesn't really in today's environment with, a Google search, you find 15 fabricators, and today predominantly buyers that we focus on are buying parts. That's all they do is buy parts every day. They don't particularly care how good or bad they are. I mean, they have to be good, but they expect everybody's going to be good. So you're quoting against the world, just like you guys, we talked earlier, so if you make that table over there and it's $500 and somebody else has $480 on it, you're not getting it.
Uh-huh.
And of course, if they go, hey, can you do it for $470? Well, you might, but can you?
So custom products sometimes means more waste because you don't get to have efficiencies across the assembly line. Do you guys see that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily call it waste as much as, if I build 5 tables, I can build them better than I can make one.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, just like when you build a house or you build a door or whatever, the first one you learn on. Well, we are continually learning on the first one forever. And,
Yep.
It's hard. That great analogy is somebody always wins the race. So if you got 30 people, well, some are going to be faster than others. And it doesn't really matter if they've been there 5 or 10 or 25 years. They, of course, get acclimated with how things are built. However, some are just better than others, and some start faster, and some finish faster. So it's just really hard because even if you do see a product, which we do see products that are the same come in, and not that we don't do production, but we may build 10 chair-looking thingies over there, and so I may have done those 10 a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if Cole built them 10 years ago and he had 35 hours a piece in them, well, scheduling wise, he may not get to build them this time. So then Lee gets to build them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Lee takes 40 hours a piece in them. Well, what's going on?
Uh-huh. More attention to detail over here.
Possibly, and a loss for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Looks great.
Better product.
So one quick question before we dive too much into it. Your path out of high school, you went to college.
Mm-hmm.
You got a degree in
Business and marketing.
And then you took a 10-year hiatus out of Northwest Ohio in corporate America.
Yep.
Is that the path you thought it was going to take? Is that what you were looking for? Or did you always think that it would bring you back to
No,
Northwest Ohio?
not at all, really. I don't know. Great question. When you do that, you think you're going to go out and kill the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, you could say, I guess I was successful in my own terms, so to speak. And, I kind of think maybe the city put the country back in me, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just hard to, what you think happens doesn't really always happen. And of course, things change and families change, and then you want to have kids and where you want to be and all that stuff. No, I think getting out, being in some cities, and I'm not against cities, I just don't like them.
Yeah, that's okay.
So I think part of that was, how do we get home? I think the bigger path was I always knew that I wanted to graduate and go somewhere else to get experience,
Mm-hmm.
regardless. And if there was an opportunity to come back home, that would be great. And it did kind of work that way. But it's tough. I think that challenge. How do you tell kids where to go, what to do? And some of them just want to go and leave, and that's awesome. But some of them want to stay home and be close to home, and that can create troubling things too. You guys have been blessed with a hugely successful business plan that allows people to travel and go.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people want to do that?
Right.
And
It's
no,
tough.
that's why, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you think has led to the success of a fourth generation family business?
Well, leadership for one. As crazy as that may or may not sound, you can, point fingers, family members to employees, regardless of which way it ends, you got to have people driving to the top, and you got to have the bus go in the same direction. I'm kind of a big proponent of, it's very easy for, one guy to ring the bell on the bus and stop and want to get off, and that's fine, but we got to keep going. And sometimes that sounds really easy, but it's just not, and everybody has their own facet on what are we going to do next? What does it take? How much money do we want to spend? Do we really need to spend it? Do we need to pay people more? Do we need to pay them less? There's a lot of dynamics that go in that, Dustin as a business owner probably has very inept intuition on just how much these things cost, whether it's insurance or matching 401ks or all these things that come up that you look at and you say, man, there's got to be an easier way, right? But what has I think held our family business together is that we have enough people on the bus going the right direction, and everybody wants to go further. Until that bus stops, you got to find out. You need to give them. You need to keep them going. How do you get there? And then the next question, of course, is, well, where are we going? Where are we going on this bus? And that's always a hard question. For us, in the family business, I think the question of how did we stay where we are. I'd like to say that I was a big part of that because my dad grew up and quoted stuff, and I learned to quote stuff at a very young age. And you can't, I couldn't take you three out there with me and just say, hey, quote this. Because as much as you think you can just look at stuff and go, yeah, that cup's going to cost $15. Well, that's great. But the guy down the road sells them for 14. So you really have to grow up in that. You have to learn it. You have to know it. And, 20 plus years of me doing this and 10 other years in this style of industry, I'm not kidding you, every single day I go out, I find something that I just don't know or that I missed because you just can't see it. Where the parts that we build don't always have everything on them, right? And what I mean by that is we've got some weldments in-house right now, and they're longer than this room. They're about 4 foot square. They have 3-inch square blocks on the corners. And when you get a 3-inch block that's 40 feet long, it warps. Well, the part's supposed to be straight. So what happened was we cut those bars in half to keep them straighter. And then what happens with that is it's a 3-inch block. So you can't just glue them together. Mm-hmm. Well, then you got to cut them out a lot. And so now all of a sudden you think you go from one bar, right, that you don't have any welding on, to now I've got to piece these together. And oh, by the way, it's 3 inches thick, and it takes about 25 passes to get it, which equates to about 4 hours, or more. So now there's about 6 of those sides. And so here we go again, mm-hmm. right? Because now all of a sudden 25 extra hours on a weldment that's got 100 in it is pretty significant. So where I was going with that was just to be able to see that stuff is just an absolute challenge every day. And steel in general is a funny material. You'd think it was just all the same. And we machine parts too, and when we cut steel, things happen to it. Stresses are relieved. And we're trying to make a table like this and hold it flat within 5 thousandths. And 5 thousandths is actually less than that hair, right? It's just really tight, and so then you're dependent on an operator and how it's set up. So the knowledge that has to be acquired, I think, to do the job is part of what has made it successful. And certainly we have other people in our business, not just family members, that are doing mm-hmm. that for us. That same thing. They've either been in the business or they've grown up in that business and they've learned it. But that's the challenge we face, especially moving forward. Is how do we capture those people?
Yeah,
and how do we find that work?
Is there a piece of information or something that you take from the prior generations that helps you be a better leader now?
I'm not sure they're the same, because I think the job atmosphere is quite different than it used to be. Mm-hmm. I joke about this. Years and years ago, I was digging through some very old quotes, back when my granddad was in the business running. And I would see, obviously nothing's on paper anymore, but pulled out a quote, and it had, material, 5,000, labor, 5,000, Cadillac, 5,000, price, right? And so back then, if you were really good at what you did and you had a customer, there weren't 15 others to go for. So you had this. If you did good work and you had good customers, which still today works, obviously, but there's just such a different job atmosphere today where, I look for customers that have lots of what we do, right? So there are companies that do $200-300 million projects with, let's say, lots of robots, right? Well, all that robot, every robot sits on a giant base of steel. There's lots of tooling, there's lots of machining, and so they bring those all inside a building and they assemble them, right? So they're continually buying all that stuff. So those are the customers I look for because they buy millions a year of these products. Well, again, the problem with that is they don't just know me, right? They know everyone that does what I do. That's how they find them. So, a part can be literally $500 or $500,000, and they're just looking for the low bidder. There's that old joke about parts on the space shuttle, and it's not really a joke because what they expect, right, is every single supplier that they have qualified does the same good work. And so certainly if I could go to a customer today and say, hey, we did $1 million with you last year and we have never screwed up, right? Now I've got some clout. Unfortunately, I can't do that. And I don't think anybody can because we all make mistakes. I think what we're very good at, which has kept us as a family business, is when we make a mistake, we fix it absolutely first. And we prioritize that. Some companies don't do that. They fit it in when they can fit it in, and we do not. We do not. We just, if we make mistakes, we fix them. But it's just so that generation from years ago just had a different, the game was different back then.
How many people do you have inside Richmond Machine working?
We're about 30.
Oh.
So just under 30 guys. We've got roughly 20 welders and roughly 10 machinists.
And so is that one shift, two shifts? How do you guys do
one
that?
shift?
One?
Yep.
And is that kind of a comfortable size? That's where you guys are running lean and mean? You're happy? And
I wouldn't say happy or satisfied, but it's definitely lean.
Yeah.
It's probably the leanest we've ever run, to be honest with you. Some of it's a little bit different because of the the marketability of steel has just gone nuts here in the last 2 years. So it's a challenge to look at true numbers because you could have done X million last year, and then that number instantly goes up because you're paying for more steel.
Yeah, material prices are always rising. So
now you guys are more of a custom shop, you said, but it seems like where you guys started with buggy wheels and things like that, that was more of a, I don't want to say like a stamp and go method, but they're all essentially the same and you were mass producing parts for that. When did that change happen? And was there a specific reason that you guys switched away from doing something like that?
I don't know the answer to that. I suspect probably more evolution than anything. I don't know all of those pieces of that puzzle that went through back in the 50s and the 60s. The company was incorporated, I think, in 69, where it's located today, and it's been added on to several times. But I think, like buggy wheels obviously disappeared. Right? And as an example, Reese Hitches manufactures their own. And so now, believe it or not, we actually do a fair amount of work for customers that do their own stuff. And just like we do, when you get busy enough, you have to learn what you're really good at. And not that you're not good at it, but there are avenues where you can use other suppliers to subcontract and get that done quicker because, like you said, we got 30 guys, and there are months where I need 50. And, well, I don't have them, and I can't hire them and have them trained in 2 months, and then in the third month, I don't need them anymore.
Do you have 30 projects going at a time then, or do you have say these big
Probably more.
apparatuses, do you have multiple welders on one project that's sizable, or do you just say, hey, this is a job you're going to be on for a month because now you know what that end product's going to be and the quality of the turnout, or do you have all hands on deck, we got to get this thing done, 10 guys are welding?
It's interesting. We probably have way more than that. There's probably 50 plus jobs at any given time, and some of them are small, some are big. Our particular plant happens to be divided into crews, so each crew's got 4 guys or 5 guys or whatever, and that scheduling is just a continual battle. And it's a battle because in our world, deliveries are king.
Yeah.
Nobody comes in and says, hey, I need 5 of those tables. Can you get them to me next year? You know, they literally, and it doesn't really matter whether it's $1,000 or whether it's $50,000. They say, hey, I need these in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so then you look at how do you manage that? So yeah, if you walk in today, you'll probably see 15 welders just flying. I mean, there'll be 15 hoods down, and and they're not all working. You know, like that job we talked about earlier. That's a sizable job, and so there might be 1,500 hours in that. So that'll take some time and some months. That has a little bit longer delivery, but it's a lot of parts. So if we're building, I use these chairs as an example. We don't build chairs, by the way, but if we were, that chair might take a day. So stuff is just continually, and then a lot of what we do too, we have to machine parts before we can assemble them.
Yep.
So now you got a whole nother dilemma, right? Because depending on your scheduling in the machine shop, and we don't really sell them together. I sell them separate. They're not different entities, but we sell machining and we sell fab work, and a lot of times they go together.
Yep.
But we've got big mills in house, and it's not uncommon for a part on our big mills to take 40, 50 hours. Well, that's a week and a half.
Yeah.
So if crew A needs some parts made so they can keep going,
you got to wait for the mill to get done in 50 hours.
And the last thing we want to do is tear it down.
Yeah.
Because the parts we're putting in these big mills take, days or weeks to set up.
Yeah.
So it's just a continual battle.
So one of the things with building for these people that are undisclosed, unnamed, large equipment manufacturers, what would you say is the coolest project that you guys have built for? And maybe you can't use names, but what would you say is the coolest project that you've seen through in your 20 years?
Dude, boy, we come in about every other week. It really is that fascinating. We just do some crazy stuff. I have one in the shop right now that Cole and I were talking about earlier. This, for lack of a better term, this is actually a machine. And as we spoke earlier, we don't really build machines despite the name. We build parts, but this is a machine, and it actually takes material, for lack of a better term, that comes in like hay bales, and it makes and shreds the material into sound dampening panels. So like at schools or gymnasiums or whatever, you see these panels all over the ceilings, and it looks like a fibrous material. So we are building a machine that actually shreds all of that material, lays it on a conveyor, tamps it down prior to going into an oven that they have that squishes it down to 1-inch thick material where they cut it and then build the panels. Very, very unique material, all stainless steel. The rolls, the material drops into a series of rolls, about 8 of them, that have, the rolls are 6-inch diameter, they're 120 inches long, and they have 364 2-inch spikes sticking out of them all over the place. So they all run together as the material is dropping through them, and it just completely shreds this material and drops it onto a conveyor. And so we're in the process right now. It's on our LinkedIn page. The frame is kind of up, and you can see that. We probably won't show that when it's all done for non-disclosure reasons, but very, very unique product. That one's a cool one. I mean, I can probably go back through if I had pictures. I could look at some really neat ones that we've done over the years, but that's a pretty unique one for us.
Sounds highly technical too, because if you've got that many rolls with spikes, they can't Obviously, they've got to be going in sync as it's going at a high rate of speed. So highly skilled individuals, I mean, between understand how to read prints, do the fab work, make the part, weld the part, assemble it all. You've got some pretty high skilled people there working for you then.
We do. I was just talking to one of my crew leaders this morning, and this is not a knock on any of our past employees, but we probably have as good as crews as we've ever had today, and that's a pretty big compliment, really, because the amount of prints that we see in a given day or week or month is really insane. And most of the things that we build don't really say how to build them, if you will. It sounds crazy, but engineers aren't welders.
They get the napkin out and they say, "Here, build this off the napkin."
They're good drawings, but they don't put weld symbols on them. You know, they rely on the fabricator to do that, which in some cases is probably a no-no. But we've been doing this a long time, and I think a lot of guys trust us to do that. But it's just an absolute challenge to do that. We have several kids. I call them kids because I'm old now, but they've gone to school for blueprint reading. And if I'll be honest with you, if they come to me, and again, this is not a knock because I absolutely love the trades, and I think they need. I'm all on board with these trades, but they if you say to me, "Hey, I want to take a blueprint class," I'll say, "Don't do it. Just work here." Well, you will see more blueprints from us in a week than you could possibly learn. Now, there's some very good things to do and to learn about weld symbols and so forth, but trust me, you'll learn those very quickly at our place. Yeah. And it's hard to want to say that, right? Because we want kids to go and learn that stuff. But man, if you want to look at a lot of drawings and see a variety of drawings, come to our place.
Sure.
So, going back to the skilled people, what kind of people, what kind of mindset, what kind of energy are you looking for at Richmond Machine to come in and say, "No, Cory, I'm going to college. I'm going to go take this class and this stuff and learn this." And you say, "No, just come work here." What kind of person does it take that you found has created the most success at Richmond Machine that you're still looking for today? If 30 is lean, maybe 35 is sweet spot, whatever. Who are you looking for?
Our guys are different. And I probably should back up. I certainly don't want kids to or people to not go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So definitely need that. But our guys are very unique. Our normal hours are 6 to 4:30. We run overtime on Fridays. And, that sounds pretty simple, right? We've asked them many times. When I was there working, it was always 7 to 3:30 was the 8 hour, and you added on to the end, right, for days. Our guys get up every day, and they're there by 6. And we start at 6. And like I said earlier, I was probably fortunate or unfortunate, whatever that means, to be drug out of bed when I was young. But these guys, if you live a half hour away, you got to get up pretty early. And that's every day.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've asked them, they don't want to change. They work 4/10s and they get the Friday off most of the time. So they like that. But I think, kudos to our guys because they come in every day. And that's just different. And then the second thing about our employees that are different than most is if you like production, you will hate us. It's pretty simple. As an example, there's a place in Hicksville that does, all the big poles for cell towers. And it's just monotonous, and I'm not undervaluing that at all. It's just you're building poles every day. We see them a lot. If you like that, you won't like us. Our guys love the fact that almost every day, every week, every month, it's very different. It's just very different. One day you'll be working on a tripod holding that camera, and the next day you'll be building a machine that's got 9 spike rolls coming down through it. And one day, we've got I think 3 stainless steel tanks in there right now that are 12-foot diameter, 15 feet tall. So one day you'll be doing stainless, for a couple of weeks, and the next day you'll be doing aluminum. And so they got to be pretty versed because not everybody can weld steel and then flip right over and do aluminum and then flip right over and do stainless. And they're all very different. They don't just weld like they're all the same. They're just completely different. So our guys are, I mean, they're really fantastic guys. It's just the hard part about hiring 5 more guys is how do you find those guys? And they, despite what you think, they don't walk in the door. They just don't. That's the challenge. And so we know all of the guys, all of the companies around us that have those guys. And I'm fairly protective about, I wouldn't say not hiring away from other companies, but, you know, we kind of all work together. That old adage of, I wouldn't say I really have any competitors. I just have people that do what we do. You know, we use as many competitors for something than you don't really go against them. But so we're not looking to pull those people away. But furthermore, it's the distance. So again, we start at 6. I do not like hiring guys that drive 45, 50 minutes. It's because it's just tough. You know, it's great when it's sunny and 70 out in the morning, but, you know, here we are. And I can't tell you how appreciative of our guys to be able to do it. And it's tough. And I think our guys would probably tell you if you asked them, hey, what was it like when you started? They were like, I think I was lost for a year.
So you use the analogy of the bus going in the right direction and the same direction for everybody. From a leadership level, 4th generation, how is Richmond Machine today keeping that? That's a problem everywhere, right? So disclaimer, but how is Richmond Machine keeping everybody on the bus going the same direction?
It's totally a trick question. There's no good answer to this.
I do agree.
What's the secret sauce of Richmond Machine?
Yeah.
What are you guys trying?
Boy, it's a battle every day. Probably the best answer I can give to that is it's people. You got to have the right people. Yes, it comes from the top, but I have guys inside that are just really good at what they do, and they're very communicative, and so we talk a lot. It's just I don't have that golden ball. I wish I did to see where we go from here. And it's a problem, right? It's a problem because you get so wrapped up in trying to figure out what you're doing today and tomorrow that it's tough to see the light at the end. I think probably what we do very well is we try to look at where we're at in the marketplace, and we make sure that we take care of people. And there's a lot to that. It's changed. You know, we do more lunches, freebies than we've ever done. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. We just do it because we're thankful, really. You know, the foreseeable future, I don't think, the thing I like about what we do the most, I think, is that there's always going to be what we do. Can you manage and manipulate your costs to be profitable is another story. There's always going to be custom stuff. I don't see in the next 10 years even the ability for automation to take over what we do. There certainly are automation things that can be done, but the type of product that we build, because it's all custom stuff, it would be really, really challenging. Now, certainly there are robotic welders for some welds. Right now, they're just not there quick enough that, you know, I can have a guy weld a 10-foot weldment together faster than I could set up the robot, you know, to do it. And then length and size is a whole nother issue. But I think how we get there is just taking care of people and making sure that, you know, we pay attention to what's going on. You know, it's just a hard thing to manage all of your external things that go along with doing the business. And, you know, we compete probably every day against shops that have 4 people. And the bigger stuff is where we kind of excel because the 4-man shop can't do that. But, you know, how do I compete with the 4-man shop when I got 30 guys and I'm funding 401ks and insurance? So you battle that. But I think the mindful thing is you have to stay on top of it. If you're not looking at it, you're going to lose. And you got to make adjustments. That's the hard thing. You have to adjust on the fly a lot of times, whether it's, you know, just shopping car insurance or shopping health insurance or looking at 401ks or making raises to people. And it's just a battle and never ending.
It's always something. And businesses are fun and fulfilling, but yet challenging all at the same time. And so wearing all of the hats is tough. And so it does sound like you guys have a good crew. One question I do have about the people. So are you looking for a certain set of skills to come in? You need somebody that knows how to spell their name with a welder. Do you send them through a test? Like, hey, can you turn the welder on? Okay, I'll teach you the rest. Or are you looking for somebody that's got some experience behind them to fill the seat?
In general, at our company, we are looking for people that have experience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can turn a welder on, you can make a good weld. That's A.
Mm-hmm.
You've qualified for A. Now, that's not a stopping point. That's kind of the starting point. We have had
I'm
guys,
qualified so far.
Yes.
So let's go.
Yes.
I didn't. It's got to look good, or it's just
Let
got
me get my application here for you.
Let me cut to a take where Dustin's actually trying to weld.
That'd be perfect. But we've had truck drivers that we have hired
Mhm.
that have become some of our best fab guys.
Yeah.
The challenge with that is just, again, I'd love to, and we've tried, I'd love to bring in young guys,
Mhm.
teach them how to do this stuff. The problem is, where do you put that guy and how do you pay for him?
Mhm.
Our margins are already super tight on everything. If we don't lose money on parts, so if you stick another guy on a part, instead of 10 hours, you got 20.
Yeah.
And he's got a post time somewhere. Now, of course you can just pay it, right? But now you're taking margins. So that's the hard part about our training. We've worked with the Northwest State guys and the welding program, and those guys are coming out, and that's good. That's all a start of it. But if you're a guy or a gal that just likes to work with your hands, that's a good start too.
Mhm.
I was lucky. My middle son he's just my get your hands dirty guy.
Mhm.
He doesn't want to sit in the computer.
Yeah.
So that's him. He's the guy we're looking for.
Yeah.
And my youngest too is the same way. They're just outside guys. They want to be doing stuff and building stuff. And those are the guys, carpenter's a great example because they know typically how to, you're going to put a closet door up, you're going to square that in.
Mhm.
That's a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of what we do. A lot of things on drawings are square.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, 5,000's tolerance is pretty tight.
Yeah.
But it does sound like maybe your daughter was a smarter. She didn't want to go in to be a welder. She went to be eye doctor also, and
Yeah.
she got all the brains in the and is that what I'm hearing here?
I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's accurate for sure.
And it sounds like your staff is a team of problem solvers. If I were to boil down everything I'm hearing from this custom, every single day is problem solving.
Yep. Firefighting every day.
And so how do you maintain that? If you were to bring a younger guy or girl in, how do you ingrain that culture? Is it fall in line and watch?
I think part of it is just you have to be inept enough to know that this is how it works, type of thing. We don't operate under the premise that we do everything right, and I think that's a big thing for our guys to know and understand. Some of the stuff we do, you just can't see. It sounds terrible, and again, it goes back to how do we find these people, and it's really experience and know-how. But we're kind of all in this together, and I try to make the flavor on the floor that let's just get through this. Nobody's not going to burn your toes off if it's wrong, but we got to get through this, and it's just every day is like that. And I think you could, we have, believe it or not, our crew leaders, most of them, if they make mistakes, they're really pissed off. And I've been doing this long enough, some are more costly than others, but it just happens. They don't do it on purpose. They're really good at what they do. But I think if you have the mindset that we got to get this done, we got to a lot of times we have to figure out how we're going to do it. And sometimes it may not be right. And normally there's enough of us that have enough, we pull our heads together, we can get going in the right direction. And that's really just making people aware that if you don't know, just ask. We don't care. I mean, I'm a big proponent of, no stupid questions. Come on in. My door is open all the time. Don't hesitate to ask. But if you're going to do something you don't know that it might be wrong, be ready.
So let's talk a little leadership and legacy. Being fourth generation, obviously there's challenges working in a family business. But how do you keep traditions alive? And is there a succession plan in place for the fifth generation?
Great question. The family dynamic certainly has its challenges. And I think some of the expectations that go along with family businesses are what makes it difficult. When you get into a business, and when I came back, and Dustin, you can maybe elaborate on this a little bit, but you think that when you go in, you're gonna do this job, and it's gonna be great, and everybody's gonna get along, and that's almost the polar opposite of what happens. And it's not to find faults in any particularly family member at all, really. It's just that it's tough. One guy may not want to do anything. One guy wants to work harder. Those are all things that happen in any business, really. Mm-hmm. So when it's family, it probably gets worse, because how you deal with that and how you hold people accountable can be very different, right? So if person A is not doing his job and he's really, really bad, well, that's an easy solution for most companies, right?
Yeah.
But when it's a family member, it's not quite that easy. Mm-hmm. And, succession planning can be tough too. And I think the hardest part for me, I think in any business, let alone the family businesses, you think going in that you're going to enjoy working with the people you want to work with, and it's going to be, everybody's going to be on the bus together. And that doesn't often happen. We've been pretty lucky at our company, I think, because we have been able to work through some challenges and make sure we're going the same direction. But it can be tough at times, because I think what's most important, when I come into work, I like my guys, right? And I think that is the biggest part of what makes me come in the morning, is I like the guys. I really do. And when that goes away, then I think a lot of things go away. Mm-hmm. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's just tough to, and some of that goes, well, you think that, you think a family member is going to be a great advocate, mm-hmm. and they may not be.
Yeah.
And so that gets hard, right? Mm-hmm. And then what do you do? Well, then I think hiring people and getting people that they have to be good at what they do, and then you got to like each other. Because you think about it, right? You're spending a lot of time. We spend a lot of time together, and when somebody's not holding their weight, or you don't, I don't say you don't like them, but those times can get awkward.
Yeah.
And then what do you do?
Well, and especially a business like yours, we see it here. Recently have retired Todd, my dad, and when we were in the field together, it was tough, because he had his way and I had a way, and it will get to the same end point, but it's different.
Yep.
And I'm sure in your guys' operation, you are relying on those crew leaders to get from point A to point B, yep. And it's all four do things different. And in family businesses, it's kind of the same thing. There's a passion behind it, because you want to go the same direction on the bus, but you have different ideas, different personalities, and then it sometimes collides in sometimes not healthy ways, because it is family, and it's hard. Family businesses are hard.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those conversations are harder to work through, just because there's that family relationship, and if it was somebody outside of the family, it's probably an easier conversation.
Sure.
So you came in, you've been there 20 years. Let's talk about the next 10 years. You still got some gas in the tank. Mm-hmm. And what do you think?
I'd like to think the next 10 years are going to be the best.
Are you grooming Gen 5?
Not yet.
Yeah?
No, we do not have a Gen 5 in sight yet. We got some other succession planning we got to work through on that.
Sure.
And to kind of, broaden on what you said there, Lee, that's a challenge in itself, that succession planning, right? Because it doesn't matter.
Tough.
It doesn't matter where you're at, like Dustin's or mine. At some point, there's that next generation that is, let's just call it of age, whatever that means, right? It could be 65 or 75 or 100, but what is the age? And then when you look at how do I reach out, 5, 10 years and look at where do we want to go and how do we get there? And then what if your partner is ready to retire, but doesn't?
Yeah.
And it's not because, you just get to that point, and the other guy, whether it's you or your, whoever, is in that holding pattern, and you're not really, they're still valuable, but they're not in that position where you or I are going, hey, we want to, 10 years, we want to freaking go, man.
Yeah.
We want to go. And then you got the other guy going, what do we need to go there for? And that is hard conversation just because it's evolution. It's not because it's wrong or bad. It's just because when you're 70, you're going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I am too. I know I am. Be like, I don't want to work till I'm 70, So how do you get through that? And it's tough. I think it's definitely tougher in the family scenario.
Right.
Because those are hard conversations.
Yep.
And it's not because you don't like the guy or he's not good or any of that. It's just, it's timing, right? And how much time is enough, and when's it enough? And then of course you throw in the mix that, if you're booming and everything's going great, it's normally more okay.
Right.
And then when it's slow, it's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I will say there's a little bit of luck in that too. When it comes to family legacy businesses, your talent pool, if you're only looking in your family, is so small.
Yeah.
But the instant you open it up, your succession planning, you open it up outside of the family, your talent pool becomes a lot bigger.
Sure.
And the intermixing of outside the family and inside the family, that can be what I've seen really difficult to navigate. And how do you put people in places to make decisions as growth happens through that?
With younger kids than you, I'm still in the grinder. My youngest is 6, and he kind of likes hanging out with Dad right now, but he might be the guy that wants to come to the business, but I don't want to have that expectation on him either. So I think you're right, Lee, because it doesn't have to be family all the time to help in that succession planning. It just has to be, how do we take care of these people that have been here, committed to this place, this family-run operation? How do we keep it a family-run operation and get it to the next phase? Because it'll take the generation a while to get there, to get it figured out, to help be able to do those quotes and all of the logistics and
thankfully
stuff.
you kind of hit it. I used to think that the 3% of fourth generations were only 3% because the rest of their family wasn't smart enough to do it. Just being naive, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But the real caveat to that is that's not it. It's because the pool is so small,
Mm-hmm.
right? You may have a plethora of children that want to be an optometrist
Mm-hmm.
or want to do something else. They're not going to be in the business. So all of these companies that, you have to, like right now, I may have an opportunity with my kids to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple hurdles, right, that would have to happen for that. But then you have to ask, can they do it?
Do they love it? Do they actually love it?
Yeah. And do you want to do it?
Yeah.
So then you get all these family businesses at some point where they go, well, is it more important for me to keep this in the family under the wrong pretenses, or should they just get rid of it?
Right.
And I think that that is the whole challenge of the legacy of generational families is, do you have the workability and the know-how in these children inside the family, regardless of whose family they are, that want to work to make it work? Because, we all hear the stories of, they get all this money and wealthy and then they do it and the kid comes in and he just sells it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. We're not one of them. So, we would have to have all the cards fall into place. Oddly enough, you were talking about, the 3%. What also has to take place is if you have family gaps with different generations of families, you also have to have kind of the lineup with the ages, right? So my partner is 69, and I'm 54.
Yeah.
And then the next one is 44.
Yeah.
And then my kids, are 20. So structurally, we have the gapping it kind of in place. And then, the one that's 44, his kids are very young. So mine are 20, his are 10, 12. So there actually is a gapping structure that also has to fall in line to make the whole thing work. Because if you had, like my dad and his brothers, they're 10 years apart. But if you have kids that are a couple of years apart, now that dynamic gets tough too. And what if you have 3 families and they all have kids that are the same age? So then suddenly you get to the end of the, the bus comes with the stoplight and you're like, hey, time to get off.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, we do have a shot at it.
They got to have the passion and what do you say, Cole, where passion and purpose meet? Help me
I say
out
a lot of things. I don't know. To wrap up, Cory, one last question. Lee, you might have to take it. My voice just totally goes. We sat down. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So
I like that voice.
It's
a raspy. So if you were to, you're going to have to go down a little bit of imagination with us on this. So knowing what you know now, if you woke up 18, it's May, you're graduating with no real direction or plan, what's your first step? And how do you get to where you feel you're successful?
Boy, today, being an 18 or 20-year-old, I would probably look at a different venue, to be honest with you, completely different. I think the technology, like we're doing today, is just so drastically different on what you can do and how you can generate income. If you would have told me that even 5 years ago that a golfer could go film himself on YouTube and make $250,000 a year, I'd have lost my entire paycheck on that bet. I know I would. I mean, to think that availability is out there today, I just think there are so many avenue streams. Boat's a question, right? Why am I still doing what I'm doing? When you're in here doing podcasts. How great does it get?
Listen, one of them pays the bills and one of them doesn't. So right now you're on the upside because yours pays the bills.
Yeah. We aren't quite making money off of this podcast yet, but like and subscribe. So there we start.
There you go.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say to the folks that listen in? They're few, but they're strong.
Yeah. No, I think, my ending comment would be to anybody of the young people out there, man, go, it used to be, well, if you do something you like, it'll be great. And I always said, no, you need to do something you make money and then learn to like it. And I don't know that that's the case anymore. Because of the evolution, I say evolution, but the trades have become so strong in the last 4 or 5 years. I think that to me as a young, and I've got 2 of them, 20-year-old, find something that you like and get really good at it and hang on to that. Because I think that, as you know, we all know sitting here, you can't, everybody wants to be successful overnight, and it just takes time to build clientele. And the reason it does, it's like horses. I have horses, and when you get a new horse, that horse will not trust you for a while. And it's very different than people. Like you guys could probably trust me by the end of today, but a horse won't. They just won't. So they have to build enough confidence that they know you're not going to spook them, you're not going to, and it's odd, it's very strange, but over time, I've had many horses now, but after months and months, you'll see a completely different side of them. They flip, and you're like, all right, Cole, you are okay now. I'm going to trust you. And I think that, these young kids, they don't, I want to be careful how I say this, I don't want to say they're not instilled that way, but they haven't been taught at any level to say, look, if you go build a cabinet for a guy and he calls you back and says, hey, this handle broke. You have to go fix that. And what you can't do is say, all right, well, I'll fix it for $15. That's just not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And in my book, that's not how it works. And I think whether you're building houses or farming or fixing engine, you have to learn to deal with people. And I would say more kids that I meet than now don't know how to talk to people. Obviously you're doing this because you're a very good speaker. You can tell. But in general, you have to learn to talk to people. And I hope that that's not going away,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The caring part of people seems to get dismissed a lot because of all this technology we have. And I think we can all attest to the fact that we've texted and then, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still always going to be a sales vibe to me. And as a young guy, go out there and talk to people and let them know you care.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you don't, then don't do it. But you gotta care. I just think there's a lot of money that can be made with a lot less stress if you're just honest and caring.
Yeah.
And that's maybe it's just me, but I just think that's really tough in today. I just don't see it that much.
Well, that's how you made it to the fourth generation and got to where you're at, and you're successful, and you've got this good core of people because you care and you care about people. And you're instilling that. And I think that's a great characteristic in probably the why behind why things are working for you and it's successful. So, no, I think that's a great way to end. I appreciate having you on today. Thanks for joining us here at the Trenchless Table. It's been fun to get to know you and talk shop today. And we look forward to seeing you back here when
Super. Love what you guys are doing.
When we see what happens in the next 5-10 years, what that generation looks like.
And kudos to you. I mean, this is just fascinating. You ever think that one day you'll be sitting here and you go, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast.
Funny story.
This is great, though.
Funny story. We had
takes time and energy and money.
Not much time.
I mean, if you want to talk about the amount of time it took him to think about this, it was about 2.5 seconds when we saw the empty space.
Yeah, but he's getting good at it now.
He is.
But Lee said, we got an empty space up there. What do you think about building a podcast room? 2 days later, we had contractors in here. We were back building again. So it's just funny.
This is marketing, right, Lee?
This is
all marketing.
This is marketing. But you know what? I think it's I like the side of marketing in that it's all just about relationships. And if nothing comes of this, great. We had a good time doing it. We got to sit down. We got to hit some nuggets. We got to, share some shorts out of it on YouTube that people are loving. And so if that's what it takes, if we impact one 18-year-old trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do with life, I think it's worth it.
Absolutely.
And, the podcast is sponsored by Obic. It's not an Obic podcast. We did that specifically. Just because we wanted it to be open to everybody. We didn't want it to be about one industry, because I think these kids across all industries, there's successful people in every industry. Now we just have to help them get there.
Yeah. I think that's a great ending too, is, when we were in school, we all had this guidance counselor, right? Said, here's this list of jobs. And you're like, I don't know about that. But I think there's so much out there, whether it's your company or my company, that kids don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just don't know. So kudos to you guys for doing this. This is awesome.
We're trying to bring every business and opportunity to light so people know there's opportunities. And man, they can make so much money in the trades, and just understanding the opportunity is our end goal.